Yo everybody, what's going on? This is Keegan from Kman Reviews. If you enjoyed this review, make sure you hit that like and the subscribe button, and if you have any opinions at all that you would like to share, make sure to leave them down in the comment section. Down with Webster. V. Down with Webster are a Canadian rap rock group that I've already covered on this channel fairly recently. I got a suggestion from the Discord server to cover the group's debut EP, Time to Win Volume 1, which there will be a link in the corner for you to go check that out. Now, after 7 years, the band seems to have come out of nowhere to drop a new album, or so I believed. I thought this was fresh material, and while it technically is, these songs have never seen the light of day, but this album has apparently been in the vault for about 6 years. Apparently this was recorded over the span of a full year in 2015, but was never released. Now, for some reason, the band has decided to share it with us, their 5th album, aptly titled V, or 5 in Roman numerals. Was this album worth showing, or should it have stayed locked in the vault? Let's find out as I review it, track by track. We will start with the singles, with there being 2 of them. The first one being the closer, Love Is Not Enough, which opens up with this more sad guitar melody, very similar to a bunch of other moodier pop hits, and then follows down that path even more with this drum machine melody added, painting this instrumental as pretty scant and minimal. Unlike their early years, there is 0 rap verse on this track. The vocals are all handled by Pat, and he does a good job with what he's given. He portrays emotion well as he sings about how he was so committed to this relationship, but he was getting nothing back in return, so he called it off. Honestly, not a bad track. I can see it growing on me. And the second and final single, the opener, Take Us Alive, purely by title, sounds like it's going to be this big, in-your-face cut, but instead it opens up with these pitched oh-ohs and ooh-oohs, an extremely dense bass, and a pretty monotone delivery from Pat, and a rap verse from Cam that I do enjoy despite it being way too short. Thankfully, it does amp up for the chorus, but not in the way I would have liked. It's a pure pop chorus, just with a slightly rockier edge, and it's got a drop in everything. It feels very ingenuine. Doesn't feel like their hearts were in this track. And I've heard better versions of this song, even from other Canadian bands in the same scene, like Faber Drive or Stereos. I think I'm gonna pass here. Now for the rest of the tracks. Hurricane is a song I'm pretty conflicted on, and a lot of that mainly lies on the instrumentation. It's incredibly packed, busy, suffocating at times, especially when that chorus rolls around with the distorted synths, heavy percussion, and pitched background vocals. It's a lot to take in, and while it does definitely pack a punch, the track is only at a medium tempo anyway, so the punch is pretty weak as a result. The rap verse is pretty great though, with Cam and Bucky switching mid-verse, which is cool, but that's really all the track has going for it. Pat's vocals don't feel like they belong, they're too loud on the verses and too muted on the choruses. It's a clunky track. I'll pass here. Livewire opens up with some of these horrible chipmunk-pitched vocals, and I immediately get worried we're going to get more of the same that was on Hurricane, but thankfully I think this is one of the better cuts on the record. The drums have a bit more of an impactful slap, and the vocal melody is the most enjoyable and appealing it's been so far. Even though it is better, the track still has some notable flaws. Pat's vocals kind of feel a bit lost in the wind, they drift off and become way too light in the mix, and the chorus has next to no power behind it, and the build-up is pretty underwhelming as a result. Honestly, it's just a decent pop song. It's not something you'd prefer to hear, but it's also not repulsive enough to make you want to change the station. It's totally acceptable, and at this point of the record, I'll take what I can get. Slay is probably the ugliest track on this record in so many ways. However, I will start with a brief positive, and that's that Cam's rap verse is pretty solid. He blends in very well with the skeletal beat, and the synths become a bit darker for that as well, which is nice. Aside from that, though, wow, this track is rough to sit through. The beat, as previously mentioned, is so bare bones, really just a drum. The synths might not as well even exist. Pat's got a lot of reverb on his voice for the verses, and the chorus with that delayed note is just straight up horrible. Lyrically, we're really diving back to 2015 lingo and how slaying was such a big deal, and as a result of that, the track is immediately dated. Hard pass. Wrong Places is a track that has similar properties to Livewire, and I also enjoy the track because of it. This is also probably the closest we get to older Down with Webster here. Bucky's verse is nice, even if it does kind of surprise being so early on the track. Pat's vocals are mostly solid, he just kind of sounds a bit monotone. The instrumental is pretty okay too. It's still extremely poppy, very standard drum loop, blinking synths, and a catchy melody overall. The breakdown is easily the star of the track though. The bass gets a lot heavier and adds some depth to an otherwise okay pop song. Probably one of my favorites here. Nothing's Cool is a really bizarre track in my eyes. I can't believe this is the same band that did Rich Girls or Your Man. The synths, the light guitar, very tame vocals, and pretty much zero percussion. I feel like it's supposed to come off as a ballad, but the tempo is too high and the performance and instrumental are too poppy to come off as such, so it's just kind of caught in this awkward middle ground. And as such, it just feels like such a nothing song. However, that breakdown at the end is a very welcome surprise. The bass amps up hundredfold, and we finally get some percussion. It kind of gives me Bad Guy from Billie Eilish vibes. Unfortunately, it's not enough to save the track from feeling a little bit like filler. Pass. Prove Yourself actually doesn't have too much wrong with it instrumentally. The percussion has a nice driving push to it, and the chippy beeps of the synths kind of harken back to their glory days a bit. But Pat's vocals here are so clean, even for this barely rough pop track. They're so sugary, and they blend in with this chorus and just kind of sound in the background. Another thing, I don't think this track needed to be almost 5 minutes long, as he sings about needing to prove yourself to this relationship. But frankly, I'm inclined to be optimistic. It's not horrible. Another World dives down into a little bit of a darker, grittier territory. The heavier instrumental with the thick bass stop and start stutters, the deeper percussion, and Pat's noticeably more ominous vocal performance. Even with this admittedly minor sonic shift, the track is still pretty damn poppy. The chorus is repetitive to an annoying degree, and that skittering drum is overly prominent here. Despite the change, the track is just so boring I can barely sit through it. Lyrically, it's about how this relationship ended and how he'll see her in another world, just kind of like a final goodbye. But this track is such a bore. Hard pass. And finally, Rockets is a pretty good track to close off this review. I think the main thing that separates this from most of the other tracks is the life, the flavor, the personality coming out of the vocals. Pat sounds great here. He sounds motivated. And I can't quite tell who does the rap verse here. I think it's Cam, but regardless, it is an energetic verse and adds even more life here. While there are some very cliche pop elements here, the drop and its pitch synths can get a bit irritating, but the build up to it is certainly worth it. Lyrically, it's pretty motivational and uplifting about soaring to incredible heights, becoming rockets, and flying to the stars. I enjoyed this one. Overall, yeah, what a drastic step down from their debut. This is pretty appalling. I heard the band had broke up at this time due to creative differences, and if this was the album that broke the band up, I frankly wouldn't be surprised at all. It's just so boring half the time. There's minimal energy, and most of it just kind of reminds me of the wash, rinse, repeat pop music coming out of the 2015-2016 time. And frankly, I think this should remain locked up. I'm feeling about a 3.5 out of 10 on this album. Kind of a shame. Well guys, hope you enjoyed that review. Thank you all so much for watching. I will see you in the next one. Peace.